Ladies, have you ever felt like the more you give, the more he pulls away? Like the harder you try to love him, the colder he becomes? It's heartbreaking, confusing, and it can make you question your worth. But let me tell you something powerful. Men can't resist women who detach, not because they're playing games, but because they're walking in power. Detachment is so misunderstood, especially by women who love deeply. The moment you start talking about detaching, people think you've stopped caring. They assume you're being cold, distant, or that you've given up on love altogether. But that's not what it means. Detachment isn't about turning your heart off. It's not about playing games or pretending you don't feel anything. Detachment, in its truest form, is a declaration of self-worth. It's saying, I love you, but I love me more. When a woman detaches, she's not walking away from love. She's walking away from the pain of constantly trying to prove she's worthy of being chosen. She's walking away from one-sided effort, from begging for attention, from over-explaining her value. It's that quiet moment when she realizes, I don't have to keep giving in order to be seen. And that realization changes everything, because the more you force yourself to be available, the more you shrink yourself to fit into his world, the more invisible you become. You lose your voice, you lose your glow. You lose you. You see, detachment is the moment you reclaim your voice. It's the decision to stop chasing and start receiving. When a woman respects herself enough to pull back, not to punish, but to protect her energy, it changes the dynamic completely. A man may not always be able to explain it, but he feels it. He senses the shift. She's not texting like she used to. She's not initiating the calls. She's not overgiving to fill the silence. And it's not because she's mad, it's because she's done performing for someone who hasn't even shown he deserves the show. Self-respect is what detachment looks like in action. It's being willing to be misunderstood for the sake of your peace. It's realizing that love is not something you have to earn through suffering. That if someone wants to be in your life, they'll make the effort, not just give you excuses. And when you detach, you're not closing the door. You're just not holding it open for someone who keeps walking in and out like it's a game. We've been taught that the more we give, the more someone will love us. That if we just wait a little longer, do a little more, forgive one more time, maybe then he'll see our worth. But what if your worth isn't in what you do, but in what you refuse to tolerate? What if the most attractive thing about you isn't your loyalty, but your ability to walk away when you're not being cherished? That's what detachment reveals. A woman who can love deeply, but also walk away gracefully, sends a powerful message without saying a word. She becomes the kind of woman who doesn't need to convince anyone to choose her, because she's already chosen herself. There's something incredibly powerful about a woman who knows how to be emotionally independent. She's not detached from her emotions. No, she feels deeply. She loves deeply. But she doesn't allow her emotions to control her decisions or define her worth. She's not sitting by the phone waiting for a text. She's not crying herself to sleep wondering why he didn't call, because her world isn't built around one person's attention. Emotional independence means she has a life, a purpose, a rhythm that doesn't collapse because someone isn't showing up the way she hoped. When a man meets a woman like that, he notices, not just because she's different, but because her energy is rare. She's not needy, not because she doesn't want love, but because she already gives herself the love she needs. She doesn't demand his presence to feel beautiful. She doesn't need constant reassurance to feel secure. She knows how to hold space for herself, how to sit with her emotions without projecting them onto someone else. That kind of woman, she stands out, because while the world teaches us to attach, to cling, to wait, she's out there building, growing, healing, moving. Men are naturally drawn to a sense of confidence that isn't loud or boastful. It's quiet, subtle. It's in how she carries herself. It's in how she doesn't panic when he pulls away. It's in how she doesn't try to convince him of her worth. That kind of strength is rare, and it's incredibly attractive. Not because she's trying to be hard or emotionless, but because she's rooted. She knows that whether someone stays or goes, she'll be okay. She doesn't tie herself, esteem to how much attention she gets. And that's what makes her magnetic. So many women give their emotional power away without even realizing it. They wait by the phone. They shape their days around someone else's mood. They feel unloved and start questioning their value. But emotional independence is saying, I am whole with or without your validation. It's understanding that relationships are not meant to complete us, they are meant to complement who we already are, and when a woman is emotionally grounded, she no longer reacts out of fear. She responds with clarity. She doesn't chase closure, she becomes her own closure. She doesn't beg to be seen, she shows up for herself. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about caring for yourself so deeply that you refuse to let anyone disturb your peace. It's about knowing that you don't have to convince someone to choose you, because the one who's meant for you will recognize your value not because you shouted it, but because you lived it. A woman like that can sit in silence and still speak volumes. Her strength isn't in how loud she is, but in how little she needs to explain who she is. There's a cycle so many women fall into without realizing it, a cycle of trying too hard, giving too much, and constantly hoping that maybe this time things will change. It starts small. He pulls away a little, and instead of stepping back two, you move closer. You overthink, overgive, overcompensate. You send that good morning text hoping to feel connected. You check if he saw your story, hoping it means he's thinking of you. You try to be more understanding, more patient, more available, all in the name of love, but what you're really doing is chasing, and that chase comes from fear, fear of losing him, fear of being abandoned. Fear of not being enough, that fear is what desperation feels like. It doesn't always look like begging or pleading. Sometimes it looks like always being the one to reach out first, always being available. Always adjusting your boundaries to make room for his inconsistency, and every time you do that, you send a silent message, I'll accept whatever you give, just don't leave. That energy is heavy, it's not attractive. It's not empowering, it makes you feel small, it makes you question yourself, and worst of all, it teaches him that he doesn't need to show up fully to keep you around, but detachment, real, intentional detachment, breaks that cycle completely. It's the moment you say, I don't need to chase what's not chasing me. It's the decision to stop begging for clarity and start creating it within yourself. You no longer wait for him to define the relationship. You define your own standards and walk away from anything that doesn't meet them. Detachment shifts the focus back to you, not in a selfish way, but in a way that says, I'm no longer willing to lose myself to keep someone else. And the moment you detach, the energy changes. Suddenly you're not so predictable, you're not always available, you're not over-explaining yourself or trying to prove your worth, you're silent, you're still, you're focused on your own life, and that's silence. That shift, he feels it. He notices the gap where your energy used to be, because men don't respond to pressure, they respond to space. When you detach, you create that space, and in that space, they're left to face the reality of your absence. But detachment isn't about manipulating outcomes. It's not about pulling away just to get a reaction. It's about truly letting go of the need to control how someone shows up. You stop trying to force love. You stop overfunctioning in relationships, and when you do that, something beautiful happens. You come back to yourself. You stop being the woman who waits, and you become the woman who walks, not out of anger, but out of peace. Out of alignment, out of finally realizing that love doesn't have to be fought for when it's real. There's something deeply intriguing about a woman who doesn't lay all her cards on the table right away. She's open, yes, but she's not an open book. She's warm, but there's still something about her that keeps you wondering. She doesn't rush to reveal every thought, every feeling, every detail of her past. She allows space for curiosity to grow, and that right there is the power of mystery, not because she's hiding anything, but because she values herself enough to let someone earn her depth. And when a woman moves like that, when she holds a little bit back, not in fear but in confidence, she becomes unforgettable. Men are naturally wired to pursue. That's not a myth, it's a pattern rooted in how attraction works. And when everything about you is immediately accessible, when you're too available, too quick to respond, too eager to please, the chase loses its meaning. But when a woman lives a full life, when she's not waiting by the phone, not overly responsive, not always trying to please, she becomes a challenge in the most beautiful way, not because she's playing games, but because she's showing that her time and energy are precious. That she has a life beyond the relationship, and a woman like that stands out. Mystery doesn't mean being fake. It's not about pretending to be something you're not. It's about allowing someone to discover you layer by layer. It's about pacing the emotional intimacy instead of flooding someone with it all at once. When you leave room for someone to wonder about you, to ask questions, to lean in, you're creating tension, the good kind. The kind that builds interest and deepens connection. When you're not always available, when you're not trying so hard to be chosen, you give the other person a reason to step up and pursue you with intention. Some women confuse vulnerability with exposure. They think being real means putting everything out there too soon, but vulnerability has boundaries. It's not about emotional dumping or oversharing. It's about knowing when and how to open up, and only doing so with someone who's earned that access. And that discernment, that ability to be emotionally wise, is what creates mystery, because you're not giving your heart away to just anyone. You're observing, you're present, you're letting the connection unfold without forcing it. When you're mysterious, you don't react to every little thing. You don't explain yourself to someone who hasn't earned the right to hear your story. You don't rush to clarify your worth. Your silence becomes a statement. Your pauses carry weight, and in a world where everyone is trying to be seen and heard, a woman who's comfortable with not always being available becomes magnetic. She's not chasing attention, yet she gets it. She's not trying to stand out, but she does, because there's something about her that can't quite be figured out, and that's exactly what draws people in. When a woman detaches, what she's really doing is drawing a line in the sand. She's creating an invisible but powerful boundary that says, this is how far you can go with me. And not in anger, not in bitterness, but in clarity. You see, energy doesn't lie. People feel your standards even when you don't speak them. And when you choose to detach, you're sending out a clear message, not just to him, but to the universe, that your peace is non-negotiable, that your time is valuable, that your heart is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. That's not being guarded, that's having energetic boundaries. Boundaries aren't about building walls, they're about choosing doors, doors you control, doors that only open to those who know how to knock with respect, consistency, and care. Detachment is one of the most graceful ways to enforce those boundaries, because instead of yelling, begging, or explaining over and over again, you simply shift, you pull your energy back, you no longer argue to be understood. You no longer chase clarity from someone who thrives in confusion. You no longer try to fix someone who hasn't shown any real desire to grow. And that quiet shift, that silent pulling back, it teaches people how to treat you far more than words ever could. People respond to energy more than they respond to conversation. You can say, I deserve better, 1,000 times, but if your actions say, I'll settle for less, no one is going to believe your words. That's why detachment works, because it aligns your energy with your standards. It shows that you're no longer available for chaos, that you're no longer willing to be on an emotional roller coaster just to feel a sense of connection. That if someone can't bring peace into your life, you're not afraid to remove their access to it. There's a strength in emotional detachment that many people overlook. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. It's about knowing that not everyone gets a second, third, or fourth chance, that your forgiveness is not a license for continued disrespect. And when you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, fixing, chasing, What you're doing is shifting the dynamic. You're reclaiming your power. You're showing that your value doesn't decrease just because someone couldn't see it. You're creating space for respect to enter, because respect can't grow in a space filled with desperation and emotional chaos. Energetic boundaries aren't loud, they're not performative, they're quiet and firm, they're felt in your pauses, in your silence, in your decision to no longer engage in drama, they're felt when you no longer participate in conversations that go in circles. When you stop chasing closure, when you stop showing up for someone who doesn't show up for you, that's when your energy shifts. That's when you start attracting people who rise to meet you instead of those who drain you. There comes a moment when a woman realizes that her deepest power doesn't lie in how much she loves, how much she gives, or how much she sacrifices. It lies in her ability to say, "I will be okay, whether you stay or go." That moment changes everything. Because so many women are taught that love is about holding on, about enduring, about proving their worth through pain. But real power, true soul, deep power is found in detachment, not the kind that's cold or guarded, but the kind that whispers, "I choose peace over confusion. I choose me." When a woman reaches this level of emotional maturity, she becomes a force. She doesn't lose herself trying to hold someone who doesn't want to be held. She doesn't break down when someone withdraws their affection. She feels the pain, yes, but she doesn't allow it to consume her. She knows her worth doesn't come from how someone else treats her. It comes from the way she treats herself. And when she treats herself like a priority, when she protects her energy like it's sacred, she stops accepting love that feels like a battle. This kind of detachment isn't about being numb, it's about being aware. Aware of the patterns, aware of the way she used to chase, aware of the emotional exhaustion that comes from trying to be enough for someone who was never ready. She sees it now. She sees how many times she gave away her power, how often she stayed too long, how often she hoped for potential instead of honoring the present. And that awareness, that's the foundation of her power. That's where her healing begins. When a woman detaches, she finally lets go of the illusion that she has to be chosen to matter. She no longer needs to be picked. She picks herself. She wakes up in the morning not wondering if she's loved, but knowing she is, by herself. She stops fighting for a seat at a table that never truly welcomed her. And in doing so, she becomes unavailable to anything less than what aligns with her peace. That shift is everything, because men can feel it. People around her can feel it. She carries herself differently. She no longer explains her silence. She no longer justifies her standards. She simply moves with quiet confidence, trusting that what's meant for her will never have to be chased. A woman who detaches from needing someone to complete her is the woman who becomes complete within herself. And from that place, she attracts different kinds of relationships, not ones based on fear or lack, but ones rooted in mutual respect, effort, and truth. Because when you finally realize you don't need to be chosen to be valuable, you stop shrinking. You stop waiting, you stop tolerating, you start standing tall, walking boldly, and loving yourself loudly. And that, my dear, is the kind of woman no man can ever forget. So to every woman listening right now, hear this: you are not too much. You are not too emotional, you are not asking for too much, but you are too powerful to be begging for love that's half given. Detachment is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's choosing peace over chaos. It's choosing you over the fear of being alone. And when you do that, when you truly stand in your worth, you won't have to chase love, because love, the right love, will come chasing you.